Welcome to Hope, Heartful Outreach, Positive Encouragement, brought to you by Break Free Christian Performers Association, Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 organization focused on community outreach for over 23 years. On this broadcast, we discuss real life issues from a Christ follower's perspective. So if you are enjoying this programming, please go ahead and subscribe and go ahead and click the notification bell so that you are notified whenever we upload a new video or whenever we're going live on the internet. Thank you for joining us today. And we would really appreciate your support if you could visit us at bcpainc.org. Take a look at the programs that we are focused on. We would really appreciate your support to give a donation of any amount on a monthly basis so that we can keep this going. Thank you for that. And today we are going to continue our discussion on mental health. And our very own Mr. Corey Henderson is going to give a testimony today. So I am going to officially introduce him right now. Corey Henderson was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. He is the husband of Hilda Henderson and father of two adult children, Brandon and Ashley. He currently resides in Austin, Texas, where he has worked for the Texas Department of Public Safety for going on 4 years. Corey is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served from 1992 to 1996 at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and Camp Foster, Okinawa, Japan. He is a follower of Christ who desires to grow daily and share Christ when the opportunity arises. So come on in, Corey. Let's have a little chat. How are you doing?
I'm good this evening. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I know that was a little awkward to be able to be introduced when you've been
Yeah,
with me the entire time.
it was to be
Yeah.
sitting backstage, so to speak, and hear an introduction about myself. Yeah, no, that's
Yes. Well, you know what? It's like wonderful to let people officially know who you are. They've been seeing your face and it's like they're
yeah,
expected to know who you are, but now they know.
yeah,
And thank you so much for your military service,
of course.
protecting our country. It's a blessing. So I had a talk with you off camera, as you know, and we've been discussing mental health. And you told me that you had something to share that you felt would be helpful to others who are struggling with mental health and that it might be an encouragement. So I want you to take some time today and share with the audience what you share with me and tell us a little bit about who you are. And let's start with talking about your childhood. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, first, let me start off by saying that my mom, she's a trooper. Always have been, and she raised us pretty much with the help of a village because being raised old school, if you have family back then, in the 70s,
Mhm.
it was the norm for sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, neighbors even to
Mhm.
jump in and help watch out for everyone's kids. So
Oh, absolutely.
but even when they weren't available, and my mom had to do it on her own, she did, I think she did a great job of
Yes.
raising three, myself, my brother, and my sister, alone for the most part. But
Yes.
yeah, growing up was interesting. My grandmother was that, just like in a lot of other families, a staple that held
Mhm.
the family together. Everybody gathered together during the holiday season, like right around this time.
Mhm.
Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas, New Year's. we had big dinners over to grandmother's house, and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing that people enjoy right around now
Hmm.
is the holidays and being able to get together and share food and the special dishes that grandma used to cook or
Yep.
whatever. Everyone's bringing their best dish to the meal, and that is yeah, that's one of the joyful things about the holidays.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
fortunately, I was able to enjoy all of that. I know some kids weren't able to get that into their version of childhood, so to speak. But God blessed me with being able to grow up in a Christian home,
Mhm.
and where grandmother kept things in order, so to speak, when it came to the
Mhm.
family as a whole. She
Right.
reached out, so missed that. I miss those days, but of course I can't go back. So
Right.
pretty much just growing up was just in that environment, a Christian environment, Christian home, where values and morals were taught. Of course, we had
Mhm.
our moments.
Yes. Well,
we
every family does.
we had
Every
our
family
moments where we
does.
kind of tested the boundaries, and you know how that goes. But
Oh yeah.
for the most part, yeah, growing up was
Mhm.
fun. It was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so as a child, we look at that parent as someone to guide us and show us the
Mhm.
way. And your mother was a single parent, right?
Yeah, for the most part, she
Yeah,
was.
right. Hmm.
She she did it working the graveyard shift, 11 to 7 shift, for as long as I can remember. Every now and then she would switch it up and work a 3 to 11. But for the
Right.
most part, growing up, all I ever seen and experienced was her sleeping after she got off at 7 for a portion of the morning. Of course, we would be in school. Then I come home. And by the time I come home, she'll have dinner prepared, and then she'll
Hmm.
be laying back down so she can get up to go back to work right around 9:30, 10ish, so she can make it
Right.
to work by 11. And she did that for 33 years for the same place.
Wow.
Yeah, so she did that, and she held it together.
I'm telling you, single moms are amazing.
They are.
It amazes me how, and I was a single mom too.
Mhm.
And it's like having to juggle all the balls and be the female presence and the male presence in the
Mhm.
household. And this is the thing. This is something that people don't think about. But no matter how hard a woman tries, she cannot be a father. She
That's right.
cannot be a male. She can
That's
only
right.
be a mom. And if she is a single mom, she is having to carry the burden of being the provider
Mhm.
and the caregiver for her children. It's a very difficult task.
Yep.
So yeah. So when you were young, how did you
Mhm.
feel about the fact that your mom was always out working and about the amount of time you got to spend with her?
Well, I mean, imagine a young boy growing up starting to get into sports. I mean, you want your mom there,
Mm,
and it's just her work schedule, the time that she got off in the morning. By the time she would get home, of course I understood that she was tired,
right.
and that she had a lot of responsibility.
Hmm.
And she made it to all of the functions that she could when it came to school. But I think by the time I came along, because I'm the youngest of three, she was at a point to where, and I didn't blame her for this at all. I mean, if she couldn't be there, she couldn't be there.
Right.
But when I started playing football, basketball, you know, swimming, that type of thing, she wasn't always able to make it. And
Hmm.
at first, as a child, you want your parent to be there. But I think as I grew and got a little older and began to understand how important it was for her to work
Yeah.
so we could eat
Right.
and
Right.
enjoy some of the just the basic necessities of life, I began
Hmm.
to understand. I don't know why I did at such a young age, but I began to understand that it was how much more important it was. So yeah.
Hmm.
And then I had, again, from that village, I had neighbors and my friends, their parents showed up, they came. So I
Hmm.
just kind of fit right in, just slid right in with them, and just, their parents praised me, hey, good play, good this, good that, so I got
Mhm.
it when my mom couldn't be there because of the necessity of having to work. Then my friends' parents were there and they praised us. So again,
Right.
it was that whole village effect.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Did you ever in your mind think, okay, especially when you're playing ball,
Mhm.
sports, did you ever have thoughts about your dad being there?
Oh, of course. I mean, every young boy want his dad to be present. I
Mhm.
did. Up until I can't recall what age I kind of distanced myself from those feelings,
Mhm.
but it was after I found out he passed away when I
I
was
see.
in 3rd grade. It was
Mhm.
early 80s. I think it was like 82, 83.
Right, right.
I think I was in the 3rd grade then, and that's when we were notified that he passed away. And I think maybe for the first couple of years, it it kind of, I wouldn't say it bothered me, but I began to feel like maybe not knowing where a part of me not ever being able to know another part of myself. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because I can't get older and then hope for one day to have a conversation, a sit down
Sure.
conversation to
Mhm.
find out, that other part of me. I
Mhm.
would never get that opportunity. I think that reality began to set in.
Right.
And it didn't feel good, but I just had to learn how to deal with it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
One thing that I notice about most kids who grow up with a single parent is that
Mhm.
they have to grow up pretty fast.
Yeah.
They have to learn how to cope with difficult things early in life, and not. I mean, in the beautiful world of butterflies and everything being perfect,
Yeah.
you know, we would love to have both parents, the mother and the father, and have that leave it to Beaver. Okay, for all of you young people, you don't even know what I'm talking about. Leave it to Beaver.
Yeah.
Let me
No,
find
no.
another way to say it. It's like we would love to have mom and dad and be able to enjoy both parents
Hmm.
and both sides of the equation throughout our lives until we grow up and get married and walk down the aisle with dad when a girl marries and do the mother son dance when sons get married. We would love all of those beautiful things to
Yeah.
fit together, but everyone's life is not perfect and beautiful. In fact, most people experience some kind of loss, some kind of trauma that separates them from having what everyone views as the perfect and the most beautiful situation. So, yeah. So, tell us more about what happened as a child for you.
Well, so I, I think as time progressed, um, maybe when I was about 5 years old, I think that's when my life changed, and I didn't really realize how much it had changed until later down the line. Because as a child, you don't understand certain things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
all you know is, hey, mom need to have some food available for me to eat when I'm hungry. Bath time, playtime,
Mm-hmm. Right.
schoolmates, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when as a 5-year-old, you're introduced to adult things
Mm-hmm.
that a 5-year-old never should be privy to.
Right.
Yeah, that's when life changes. And
Right.
that's what happened with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, um so to get into I guess the meat of the topic about mental health, um so as a 5-year-old, I was violated by a young lady, family friend, and repeatedly for I don't even remember how long. I know it was a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
um, over a period of time. And again, being exposed to things that a child should never be exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to adult things. And then considering the fact later, I began to think, as I got older and more mature, and begin to understand some things about life, like, okay, so this was done to me. So how did they find out how to do what they did to me?
Right.
You
How
follow
old
what I'm
was the
saying?
person who violated you?
I think at the time, 10,
She was 10 and you were
5.
5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what the gap. It's been so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's what the age gap was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So of course, as a child, you don't really understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just never said anything to my mom about it. Never said
Mm-hmm.
anything to anyone else about it. Um, and I can't tell you how I felt at 5, like really
Mm-hmm.
felt. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until later as I started, um, I didn't realize what it was affecting me
Mm-hmm.
from that point on, because you don't understand. Your mind isn't developed enough and mature enough to understand like the um the effects of what happened.
Right.
So as I begin to get older and that those memories coming back and understanding that what was done was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
that's when, yeah, it really began to take a toll on me.
Mm-hmm. So was there any violence, or I mean, I'm sure there was somewhat. I don't want you to have to get too graphic with your explanation,
Right.
but do
No,
you remember being hurt, or something that you know remember it being
mm.
violent in any way?
No, it wasn't violent. It wasn't no, it was never that. It was just the acts that were taking place. So,
Right.
um, but it was never any like physical violence or um, like being physically scarred as a result. So,
Right. So it was
yeah,
just inappropriate behavior.
right,
Okay, so some
exactly.
inappropriate behavior, and as a 5-year-old, you didn't even realize this is inappropriate or know what it is that
Right,
she's doing.
exactly.
But you're just victimized because of your innocence in
Hmm.
what she's doing.
Yeah.
So at what point in your life did you realize that something had happened to you that was not right?
Mm. And it had to be probably about 10, maybe
About 10, okay.
about 10 years old, maybe.
And how
Yeah.
did it affect you then when you started to realize it?
Mm, it it didn't affect me to the point where, because of course it was time. There was a time lapse
Mm-hmm.
between when it happened and when I began to understand, that it was inappropriate, it was wrong, right?
Right.
So being so far removed from it, I think that had it been a little later, had it happened a little later in life, at a point, about that point, then the connection would have been closer. Like I would have been able to connect the dots a little quicker, and it
Mm-hmm.
would have affected me a lot sooner. You follow what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense. Like, so as a 5-year old, you don't know how to process that,
Mm-hmm.
and as you get older and you finally get to a point where you realize, well, man, that was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but there was something, I guess you can say, something, mm, going on inside of me that I wasn't aware of,
Right.
right? So I
Mm-hmm.
could I could look back, acknowledge it, but at the same time not recognize what was happening inside of me because I don't know how to process that part because I
Mm-hmm.
was suppressing all
Right.
of that. You know what I
Well,
mean? So,
at 10 years old, you're still very still young at 10 years
right,
old.
exactly.
And you're not even at puberty yet.
Hmm.
It's like puberty at 12 and 13, that's when um, a young person's sexuality starts to begin to grow. You begin
Hmm.
to grow towards that. And so at 10, you were still young. And
Yeah.
so can you remember any thoughts that you were having at 10 when you realized that what triggered the thought that that was wrong?
Desires. I began to have desires um sexually that I shouldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
having, that I
Mm-hmm.
felt I shouldn't have been having.
Right, right.
And then remembering what took place,
Mm-hmm.
because that memory never left.
Right, right.
I can recall that as if it was yesterday. You
So
know.
being sexualized early in life
Hmm.
caused you to have sexual desire earlier, too early,
Earlier. Yep.
earlier
Too
than you
early.
should have,
Yep.
because like I said, around 12,
Hmm.
13, this is the kind of the normal time
Right.
when a preteen is beginning to start to have those types of hormones and feelings.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what I meant when I said earlier that young people who are going through so many things in life have to grow up early. They grow up
Yeah.
too soon.
Yeah.
And so, so how did you deal with the feelings and emotions you were having um, that early in life?
I didn't know how to.
Okay.
That's I think that's where a lot of people kind of lose sight of how people process things at certain
Mm-hmm.
stages of life. Like, I didn't know how to deal with that. I just
Mm-hmm.
thought it was normal. I just thought that,
Right.
at
Mm-hmm.
10, 11 years old, I thought, and then on top of that, back then we weren't stuck in the house playing video games. We were
Right.
out and about riding bicycles, exploring neighborhoods and doing that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff, doing outdoor things.
Mm-hmm.
So in the neighborhood where we grew up, or where I grew up, there were a lot of little pockets where adults would go into little houses or go into little parts of the woods and do certain things, and we stumbled across material,
Mm-hmm.
adult material.
Right.
So imagine being sexualized at 5, and then once I got to that point and stumbling across this material, it enhanced that.
Right. So you said
So,
something that's really key here, and that
mhm,
is, when things happen to a child,
mhm,
and at first at 5 years old, you don't even know what's going on,
right,
and then later you begin to learn a little bit more about life and learn that that should not have been happening. That's not something that should happen. But
right,
what happens is um, the desire has now been placed there early on,
right,
and it's very important to note that it becomes a normalized thing. It's like you begin to think that's something you just said is like I just thought it was normal,
right,
and I hear this a lot with people who have been molested, people who have been raped, that it's like I because I was a child, I just thought what was going on was normal.
right,
And when I began to feel funny about it, I thought something was wrong with me.
right.
Like,
Hmm.
like, why am I feeling funny? Because, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong. So, they begin to internalize. And, I just want to give a little disclaimer here. I'm not a psychologist and I'm not trying to be one, but in my career as an outreach minister, or whatever title you want to give me, because I give myself no title. Okay, people kind of get caught up in it. But in all of the years that I've been out serving the Lord and sharing with people and women and retreats and whatnot, and talking to people, I see a common um, thread that's happening among people that have had a similar story, and that's where I'm pulling my information from. I'm not a licensed counselor. So I want to make people know that up front. I just want to give that little disclaimer. We're just having a discussion here
Right.
about what happened in life.
Yeah.
So at what point do you feel that this early sexualization of your life began
Mhm.
to affect you in a negative way that you could pinpoint?
I couldn't pinpoint that until 2020.
Really?
Yeah.
It took that long.
Yeah.
And so why do you think it took that long?
Uh, fear.
Fear?
Fear. Yeah. I think because, well, for me, I can speak for me. I can't speak for everyone who's been through, because everybody processes things different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I began to look back over my life and the relationships I had been involved in, and relationships not working, and you know, and I began to wonder why, why isn't this working?
Mm-hmm.
Why, when I look back, there seemed to be a pattern in my life when it came to relating to women
Mm-hmm.
who I was in a relationship with.
Right.
And as I began to question that, and looking at the failures that I've had over the years, I could only see one common thread, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I began to really question that part of my life. Like, I've never addressed that.
So
And
you
then,
think that the common thread was a problem sexually in the relationship? So
well,
sexuality?
well, it was at times I noticed in every relationship I got to the point where I was withdrawn.
Okay.
Okay, I would seclude myself, but I had no clue why.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I would not want to be touched,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not want to be intimate at times.
Right.
And that was a common thread. And I began to question that part. Like,
Right.
why is it that I seclude myself or withdraw from the person that I'm supposed to be loving or
Right.
being loved by? And
Right.
it's not a coincidence that it's a woman.
Right. Right.
So that's when I began to question it.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't until 2020.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, well, I mean, on the other side of it all, it totally makes sense
Hmm.
that you would withdraw because
Hmm.
there is a level of post-traumatic stress that was never dealt with. In other
Hmm.
words, you know, um, having to relive that moment, especially at the point of knowledge and knowing that that moment was inappropriate and wrong, and
Right.
that you had been taken advantage of at a young age.
Right.
And so now the anger, can, that feeling of like, wow, how could this happen to me? And to have to replay that when you're trying to be close to someone, to
Hmm.
love someone,
Yeah.
this is the thing that really disturbs me about the enemy of our soul. Okay.
And it's
I
funny.
mean,
I was about to say something about that too, but
yeah,
go ahead.
it really disturbs me because
Hmm.
number one, he goes after kids,
Hmm.
you know, and that young person, that young lady who violated you, obviously must have been violated herself. I'm guessing because at 10 she shouldn't have been sexualized. She shouldn't have been
Right.
even thinking about any sexual behaviors at 10
Right.
years old.
Yeah.
She was also too young.
Yep.
And so something may have happened to that child. I can almost count on it.
No, it did. I
Yeah.
found out later it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that really bothers me is that the enemy goes after the children, goes after
Mhm.
the children and tries to get them sexualized too early and get them all messed up before they even get a chance to understand what sexuality is because God made sexuality. It's supposed to be a beautiful thing. It's
Yes.
supposed to be an expression of love between a man and a woman so that our species can continue. That's what it's supposed to be. But look at all the attacks on our sexuality,
Yeah.
even from molestation, like what you were just talking about,
Hmm.
to really two victims two victims. Okay, that's how I'm seeing it. You were victimized, but the offender was also victimized. And so it's like, um, this is an important topic and an important thing for parents to sit down and talk to their children about, because so many things happen, uh, and it's usually among people that you trust. you
Yeah.
know I'm guessing that this person is someone who was trusted by the family.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, she was. And but here's what people in the church have to understand. And
Hmm.
I'll bring it to the church.
Okay.
I know this isn't a religious show, but I have to
No,
say
but
this because
we're
it's a Christian
speaking from a
perspective.
that's right. Hmm.
Um, God blesses us with people, professional individuals who can help us.
Yes.
And I got saved when I was 16, but it didn't go away.
Hmm.
People think, oh, you get saved, all your issues are fixed. No, they aren't. No,
No.
they're not. If anything, they're enhanced because now you have the enemy on you even more.
Yes.
Whereas before, you're in the enemy's camp, but now, when you get saved, you switch camps. So you're no
Right.
longer on that side of the fence. So now
Right.
he's going to come at you even stronger, right?
Hmm. That's right.
So the issue wasn't resolved, but I thought over a period of time it would fix itself.
Mm.
And so I just kept sweeping it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug year after year because of the fear, the stigma about getting help, about seeking counseling for healing.
Hmm.
No, no, it
Right.
didn't get better.
Hmm.
It didn't.
Right.
And like I said, in 2020, an incident happened and it triggered, it was the way I responded to a situation. And that triggered this internal, I don't care, I need to get help for myself attitude
Right.
because I was sick of
Hmm.
dealing with this year in, year out,
Hmm.
affecting me to the point where I couldn't grow. It affected my relationship with God.
Right.
It was a trust thing.
Right.
And I really began to understand that
Hmm.
later. I wish I would have understood it earlier,
Hmm.
but it wasn't until that point that that particular situation happened, and it was the way that I responded to it that I was like, man, I need to get help. I really
Right.
need to get help. And that's
Hmm.
what I did. I reached out through my job and spoke to a counselor about getting counseling, and they connected me with another counselor. And I remember like it was yesterday, I was just so exhausted emotionally.
Hmm.
I I, I was just exhausted. And I
Hmm.
said, listen, I just want to let you know that I'm putting all the cards on the table. You're not going to have a problem with me sharing anything because I need to get through this. I
Right.
need to deal with this at its core,
Hmm.
and I need to deal with it for as long, I need to address it for as long as I need to address it
Hmm.
so that I can get some relief and some healing from this. So I
Right.
can resolve this and move on with my life so I can be better.
Right. Well, I applaud you for doing that. I really
Mhm.
do, because I have this analogy that I've used over and over, and it is like, whenever you ingest something that is bad for you, bad behavior, bad food, it's like it's like eating bad food, and so now you get that feeling and that watering in your mouth where it needs to come out. It
Right.
needs to come up. It needs to come out. And you
Yeah.
just really need to throw up. I know this is a gross analogy, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
But what we do is it's like, that's so ugly. It's
Mhm.
ugly. I don't want anybody to see me like that. I
Right.
don't want it to be gross. I'm just going to keep swallowing. I'm just going to keep swallowing it down and hope that it just dissipates, and it doesn't. It just keeps on festering inside. until you finally get the courage to say just what you said, Corey. I
Mm.
don't care what it looks like, and I don't care what I have to do. This has got to come out. I have to get rid of this so I can feel better.
Yeah.
And so I applaud you for that, because I have I have directed many women's retreats where I was the speaker and shared with many women, and have had them um, talk about various issues. And one of the big things that I have come to a conclusion about when it comes to issues like this is that oftentimes people don't take the time to analyze what just happened. Even when relationships break up, you know, um, instead of stopping and saying, why did we break up? What happened? You know, and not just point to the other person. Well, it was that person. No, it took two people to make this relationship. So
Right.
what was the breakdown?
Right.
And what was my part? You can't fix anyone else's part,
Right.
but you can fix your own part. And so one of the things that's hard to do is to look inside and say, well, what's wrong with me? What did I
Sure.
do wrong? What can I fix? How can I be better? And so I applaud you for doing that, because it is so necessary. And it's the very reason, avoiding it is the very reason why many people find themselves in the next relationship, you know, same, it's like a new person, but the same problem.
Right.
The problem just keeps following you. Why? Because the problem is in you, you
That's
know?
right. Yeah.
And so I'm glad to hear that you did reach out for some counseling. And um, so this is I know this is a very personal thing for you to
Mm.
share.
Yeah.
Here's one of the things that comes to my mind. Because you are a man,
Yeah.
okay, and
Mm.
because I really, over and over we hear about women being molested, women being raped,
Yeah.
women having some kind of sexual violation. And it's a rare thing for a man to talk about that happening to him.
Right.
And so, tell me about how that might play into this. How does that make you feel to discuss this as a man?
I mean, discussing it now, it's not an issue for me because I use it um, as a way to advocate for getting the help.
Mm-hmm.
But for years, mm-mm. No,
Mm-hmm.
it was like taboo. I mean, in our culture, you already know. I mean, there's a negative
Mm-hmm.
connotation when it comes to the word counseling.
Right.
Psychiatrist. Oh my God, you're going to see a psychiatrist. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, especially men.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that played a part in my reason, in my thought process as to why I never wanted to deal with it.
Right.
But again, I over the years of dealing with suppressing it, and not wanting to deal with it, even though the memories kept surfacing and I was shedding tears over the memories and, that type of thing. I just got so exhausted. I said, no, I'm tired
Mm-hmm.
of hurting people. I'm tired of responding a certain way. I'm tired of me. I'm
Right.
tired of me. And
Mm-hmm.
I need to find out where I am and who I am because it stole a part of me that I didn't even realize it stole.
Right.
And
Right.
going through counseling, the way it was explained to me was I never gave that 5-year-old a voice
Right.
because I never said anything.
Right.
So when I began to work through the process as a
Mm-hmm.
man,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a woman therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah, so she helped me change my perspective
Mm-hmm.
and look at things differently. Hey, look, you need to give this 5-year-old a voice. You
Mm-hmm.
need to let him express that part that you never let him express before
Mm-hmm.
because you suppressed his voice.
Right.
And I was able to I was in therapy for almost 2 years. It was like a year and 9 months, year and 8, 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted, and she told me, she said, no, I'm going to work with you as long as it takes to get through this.
Okay.
And that's what we did. But yeah, I mean, tough, but
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to grit my teeth and do it.
Well, I'm glad because um, I've seen men give a testimony
Mhm.
uh, about things that have happened similar to this to them. It the thing that comes to mind is young boys that were molested by like a priest or someone, and how that came out some years ago, and
Right,
there were all these 30-year-old men talking about the rape and the molestation as an adult
right.
after they've gotten married, after they have children of their own,
Yep.
never having spoken about it to anyone, and having to, at 30, 35 years old, suddenly talk about what happened to them.
Yeah.
How traumatizing,
Yeah.
it's traumatizing. And
Definitely.
I think that one of the things that in society we have to do is to stop making boys feel that they have to just tough it out, just be a dude, just don't
Hmm.
worry about stuff like this.
Yeah.
No, it's like a 5-year-old is a child, you know, a 10-year-old is a child,
Right.
and and still actually all into your teens, you're still a young person, you're still a child.
Right.
And it's like there is no expectation, or there should be no expectation, that you should just tough it out. Just because you are a man, because you're a boy, you're supposed to just be tough and take certain things. No, you should
Right.
not. And I think that just as traumatizing as that is to a girl, it can be to a boy,
Yep. Of
and
course.
it is to a boy, you know. So um, so I just wanted to know, how are you feeling about um, your journey, or where you have made it to at this
At
point?
this point,
Mhm.
yeah. Coming through counseling, I had to, one of the main things I had to do was be honest with myself.
Mhm.
That was first.
Mhm.
And I had to ask myself some tough questions and be honest about what was really inside.
Mhm.
And I had to make some tough decisions, and some people didn't understand it.
Mhm.
But um in spite of that, I still had to make some decisions that was best for me. And that was honest, right?
Mhm.
And I know sometimes things appear to be a certain way on the surface, but in all actuality, you know, if you sit down and have a conversation and listen, because nowadays listening seemed to be a lost art.
Mhm.
And people don't understand that in order for a message to get to you, you have to listen,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that journey and where I coming through those 2 years and being where I am now, I like to say, and I think I mentioned this to you, I like to tell people that I'm a different person navigating the same waters, but I'm having to learn how to do that
Mhm.
as this new individual. And I told my mom, I said, for the first time in my life, I know who I am.
Right.
The first time,
Mhm.
all these years, having dealt with that part of my life and suppressing all of that and not really, dealing with it, working through that and being honest and open and transparent. And yeah, I know who I am. Some people may not like who I am now because I've set boundaries.
Right.
And I think that especially nowadays in our society, when you set boundaries, people expect you to still do things the same way, the same way you've always
Mhm.
done it. But
Right.
when you're different and you know
Mhm.
how to set boundaries and you know how to say no and you know
Mhm.
how to say, don't cross that.
Right.
Don't, people, they're not going to like it. So, I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
And I've
Well,
learned how to be okay with that.
I think that what you said is just really powerful right there, and I don't think you
Mhm.
even kind of see it all. It's like the an incident that happens in your
Mhm.
childhood, which takes away your voice, as your counselor said, can
Mhm.
also take away your voice in many other situations,
Yeah.
whereby you just become that person that's just, just goes along and just pleases
Right.
people and just
Yep.
tries to get
Mhm.
along just to get through things.
Yep.
But when you finally gave that little boy a voice,
Mhm.
he finally was it sounds to me like he became empowered to be able, like you said, to
Yeah.
set boundaries, because
That's right.
you didn't have boundaries as a child. Even at 10 years old, when you start to actually have feelings and things about the sexual feelings, you probably had no boundaries there either. It's like, you were just not, you just were acting out based on what, the flesh is wanting, and
Right.
that's what people do.
Yep.
And so as you grow up and you begin to put all the pieces together, and the most important piece is having an understanding of who God is, and He can heal us from anything. He can
That's right.
help us to get through anything if we can just be real with ourselves about
That
where we're at.
that's the
That's the
key.
problem.
That's the
A
key.
lot of times we just don't even want to be honest with ourselves. Like, I'm a mess. I'm a mess. I got to get myself together. And we don't want to say that. We don't want to throw up. We don't want to look ugly. We want to look cute all the time and think,
Right, right.
and everybody think, oh, my life is just perfect and I'm having such a wonderful life and everything is great and everything, I'm such a wonderful person.
No.
No, stop it. Stop. Just stop and recognize that Christ died for a reason, because we're a mess. That's why He
That's right.
died, so that we could have an opportunity to repent of our sin. It's like some of our, when you're a child, of course, it's not your sin, but
Mhm.
then later, because you have been opened up to some things that you shouldn't be, now you're making choices that are your choice and are your sins.
Yeah.
And we have to ask the Savior to come in and help us. This is a very difficult topic to talk about, wasn't it, Corey?
Yes, it was challenging.
Challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say to you, thank you for being willing to be open like that and share your story. Um, it is something that's difficult for people to do, especially when they have something that affected them mentally and emotionally, and it kind of permeated throughout life. And I just want to take a moment and say to you that I applaud you and I thank you for being transparent about what happened in your life.
Sure. Yeah, it's as challenging as it may be, just from the perspective of where people otherwise wouldn't have known prior to this unless I've spoken to them one on one, to come on a social media platform and share the story this way. Yeah, it reaches more people and
Yeah,
it can help more people. So that's what's important to me. I mean, I'm old enough to understand that it's about helping others.
right. So, really, I would like for you to take a moment and share your final message of hope with those who are watching today.
Sure. I think number one, we have to understand that no two people are broken the same exact way. Even if you have two people who have gone through the same exact thing, people don't process things or handle things the same way.
Mhm.
It's just who we are as individuals. We don't lose our individuality, but through our circumstances, we learn how to navigate on our own without help. But then when we do finally get help, we begin to, you know, change our perspective. Number two, I would say that regardless of how much of a challenge it may be, seek help. Seek help. It's
Yes.
the help is out there for us, and we have to actually put ourselves in a position to where we can seek that help. And in order to do that, well, at least for me, there was an incident that triggered that. But once I got to that point, then I knew that it was time to reach out to someone. So, yeah, reach out to someone for help.
Mhm.
Also, for all the young boys out there, and I'll speak from a man's perspective, don't be ashamed to find someone who you can talk to, especially if you're young in Christ. It can be a challenge to, first of all, walk by faith.
Yes.
Everything isn't fixed when you get saved,
Mhm.
but you have to understand that God puts those in position who are professionals who can help us. So reaching out to, whether it's through the church or whether it's through a loved one,
Yeah.
intimacy with our
School.
parents. Yeah,
Mhm.
school. You're right.
Mhm.
School. Intimacy with our parents is something that's not prevalent nowadays. And for children growing up, it's difficult to sit down and have a conversation with their parents about these things. So if it's not your parents, find someone. Find someone who you can sit down and have that conversation with. And even as adults, it's difficult.
Mhm.
But a best friend, um, like I said, a pastor, a counselor, someone, find someone. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, we're responsible for ourselves. No one knows what we're going through unless we open up and talk about it.
That's correct.
And so, in order to be better for other people, we have to first be better for ourselves. So, that's our message, my message of hope.
Mhm.
Christ is able to not necessarily take away the issue, but be in that with you. And he promised to never leave us nor forsake us.
Yes, he
So,
did.
yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you for that message of hope. And I just want to encourage all of you out there listening to this broadcast. We put together some resources that will help you to reach out if you're struggling, if you're going through anything similar to this, if you have been victimized in any way. Please take a look at these resources. Either they will scroll on the screen or we will post them below this video. We will try to do both so that you can call those 800 numbers and speak to someone who will give you some help right away. Don't do it alone. Don't be alone in it. Don't try to just keep it in, but let it
that's right.
out so you can get some help.
That's right.
Yes, right, Corey?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, then. Well, that's it for us tonight. We are going to wrap this up and ask you to come back and visit us next time right here on Hope, Heartful Outreach, Positive Encouragement. Have a great night. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.